Hi guys, it's me, Trudy Lee. How's everybody doing? As you can see, I'm finally back home in my own house. I just got here yesterday, and as most of you know, I've been taking care of my mother, who's been in the hospital now for a couple of months. To recap, she had an outpatient procedure, had having a watchman put in her heart for blood clots. She didn't really understand that. She thought it was going to cure her AFib and, take care of all her problems. Come to find out, she had a little bit of dementia that I didn't even know that how bad she'd gotten. She was sundowning and she was really in a bad place. But on June 9th, the doctor that was doing the procedure ripped her aorta, and then she bled out, and it impacted her kidneys, and she's been in ICU for 6 weeks on dialysis and just, fighting for her life. She also had a stroke, but they didn't want to do a CAT scan on her, and it took them about 2 weeks to finally do a CAT scan. That I kept saying, there's something wrong with her, she's not normal anymore. And they wouldn't really listen to me till 2 weeks later. They saw that she'd had a stroke, but they're like, well, we think that might be an old stroke. So, we couldn't really get a clear answer there. Anyway, she had pneumonia. She had a yeast infection in her lung. She had 2 UTIs. She was intubated. They had to vacuum out her lung 2 times. She was just going through hell, you guys. I mean, literally hell, because she had, after that stroke, she just couldn't understand why she was there and what was going on, and she was fighting everything they did to her. She was just pulling out ports and IVs and catheters, feeding tubes. So they had to restrain her and, keep her tied down to the bed railings almost the entire time she was in ICU, which was 6 weeks. When I was there, I would untie her hands, and then I would stand there and watch her, But it was grueling, to say the least. You would just be watching her to see if you need to grab her hand real quick, But I wanted her to be able to scratch her head or her nose or whatever was bothering her. But she wasn't in her right mind at all. So there came a time this past week, this was my week, so we're taking turns on weeks. We decided to start on Monday. I had one sister that could take care of her on the weekends, and one sister could do 1 week, and then I could do another week. So I would do Monday through Friday, and then my other sister would do Saturday and Sunday. This had just recently changed like that. I was staying over the weekend also, but then it became just Monday through Friday, which was kind of a relief to me, so I could come home for the weekends. But they moved her to the next level down out of ICU, and she was there for about a week. They had to keep her on camera because, she was pulling out all her IVs and everything, and she had a port. She did have it in her neck for her dialysis, and then they moved it to her chest. And it was really bothering her. I mean, it was hooked up to her jugular vein. It was all in her chest, and it would go, you could see it. And it was really bothering her, and she would put her hand on it all the time, and they were really worried that she was going to pull that port out. So they had her on camera. And if her hand would get close to it, they would yell so loud at her. And she was right next to the nurse's station. Her room was right next to it. If she didn't immediately respond, they ran in her room. But it was okay. She would respond. I saw it happen myself, where she had her nose tube and she was starting to go like this with her nose. And they yelled at her, and she put her hand down. So it was working. So it was good. But they decided that, it was time for her to move on to another facility that could help her more. She still hadn't gotten out of bed. She still wasn't using the restroom herself. She sometimes would, go in a diaper and sometimes a bedpan. But she did actually, before she left that facility, before she left the hospital, I know that she went to the toilet 2 times with help, with assistance. So we thought she was on the right track and getting better, and they said she needed to be in a nursing home where she could get more care and grow stronger. And she wasn't feeding herself either. She had to be fed. She was real shaky, and maybe she could bring a spoon to her mouth, but she would never get enough nourishment if you weren't there feeding her, And she would never open her eyes either. She would just lay there with her eyes closed through eating and everything. But since she wanted to get up and use the restroom, she asked to get up. So that was a good sign. And we thought that, she was on her way to recovery, put it that way. So the hospital informed us that no nursing home would take her unless she had been off camera for 48 hours. And they said they were going to take away the camera. And I'm like, what? That doesn't sound like a good idea. And I wasn't there at the time that this happened, thank goodness. But they took away the camera, and you know what happened? She pulled that port out. They found her with the port pulled out. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know how much blood was involved or anything, but they said she pulled out the port. So it was a miracle she didn't, get more damage, to herself. So they had to, and she was supposed to get dialysis the day that she pulled her port out. And so, of course, the next day they put the port back in, and we were working on getting her to this nursing home. My sister had talked to the nursing home. There was a case manager that was helping us, and things were rolling. So they just this was all while my sister was there. I was here at home when all this occurred, and I anticipated that she would be going to the nursing home on Monday when I got there. So I was going to arrive there on Monday and help her get situated and settled in the nursing home. Well, all of a sudden, the hospital said they were moving her on a Saturday to the nursing home. I'm like, what? On a Saturday? That's so weird. But they said, she's going. So, of course, me and my husband, we took off and went to my mother's house and got her room all ready. We, brought pictures of her late husband and her, some familiar items, some blankets, pillows, things like that. When we got into the nursing home, nobody even knew she was coming. They didn't even have the room ready. They didn't even have sheets on the bed, nothing. So my husband, he's kind of bossy. He went and got the aide, and they got her bed made up. And no sooner had they made up her bed than the ambulance arrived with her and put her to bed. Well, nobody came in. Nobody came in to see that she was there. Nobody. No nurse, no nothing. It's like, where's everybody at? So I go to the nurse's station and I give them the papers because she has to have all these medications. She's on all kinds of medication, for her AFib and all. And so I give it to them and they make copies of it. And I said, didn't the hospital fax over all this information to y'all? And they said, no, usually they don't. And I'm like, what? I couldn't understand it. Well, they didn't know my mother was so sick. They thought they were getting somebody that was going to rehab, and that she was in condition to go to rehab, which she couldn't do any rehab. She hadn't even sat up in a chair in 6 weeks. So they were, kind of blindsided, but they should have done their due diligence and asked to see her files before they admitted her in. So the case manager is the one that hid all these things from the facility, that my mother was having dementia, sundowning, pulling all her ports out, her her catheter, her IVs, and that she was very, very difficult, very difficult. And also, she had to be straight catheterized to even urinate. She couldn't pee. They didn't tell them nothing, nothing at all. So my mother's there. No, they didn't even order her food. And I'm like, are y'all going to send a tray? They didn't even realize they had to feed her. So this was a big obligation that this nursing home now was under, because they accepted her, but they should have done their due diligence and known who they were accepting. That was the hospital's fault for hiding it, and it was their fault for not asking for her files in advance. That week that she was there at the nursing home, they did try to, physical therapists did try to come and get her to get in the wheelchair, and they had no success. She would scream and holler at them, leave me alone, leave me alone. And they didn't understand either. I could not fathom why they didn't have the skills to take care of her. And they didn't. They just were so surprised that she was acting like this. And I'm like, don't y'all deal with people that have these problems all the time? But it wasn't the right facility. So no, they never really had people that were resisting physical therapy. They're there for therapy. Anyway, it was a fiasco. From one fiasco to that hospital to the next to the nursing home. So my mother had to be taken to dialysis by ambulance on a gurney. And she had Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays she would have dialysis. So I would go with her. Like I said, we got the room ready. She was there. She had dialysis on Tuesday, took her to dialysis. I had a blanket with her. They gave me an extra blanket. She was freezing cold. She was so miserable. She acted so bad at that dialysis center, and I had to keep her calm. I had to wear a mask for 4 hours and keep her calm, and I was just massaging her feet, massaging her legs. She was like a toddler, You just have to tell her, it's just another hour. We're almost done. We're almost done. She was just complaining the whole time, mocking people, yelling at people. She didn't want anybody touching her. If she could hear somebody talking, she would mock them. She would say, blah, 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 blah. I mean, she was just out of her mind, crazy out of her mind. And it was really a challenge for everybody. I don't know if I told you, but the beds there at the facility had no railings on it because they're not allowed to restrain a patient. That's not the kind of facility they are. So they don't have them. And I told them, what if she falls out of bed? What if she gets up? And they had put mats on the floor, these thick mats, something like what you would work out on, or some, like that's what they reminded me of, workout mats that are at the gym. They put it on either side of her bed. And of course, every night that week, I would get a phone call in the middle of the night telling me, we found your mother on the floor. That was the first night, on Monday night, before her first dialysis treatment. They called me and said, I just want to let you know that we found your mother on the floor. She tried to get up. She's not strong enough to get up. And she fell. And, she's okay. We're monitoring her vitals. She's fine. Don't worry about her, but we have to call and let you know. When I got to her room the next morning, she had a huge black eye. It was so sad. It was just so sad. It was more than apparent that this is not the right facility for my mother. I would get there every morning. The visiting hours were between 9 and 7, and I would always come right like 8:50, 8:45, something like that. I was always a little bit early because I was really wanting to get in there. Wanted to make sure that she ate, that they were actually feeding her breakfast. And then I would stay there the whole day, and I would feed her lunch, and I would feed her her dinner also. And the days that she went to dialysis, they would pack her a lunch to eat at dialysis, but dialysis would not let her eat it. So they would pack her a lunch, but she wouldn't have eaten it anyway, to be honest with you, because she was just so out of it. She would not have eaten it. So on those days, she would eat no lunch at all. And I would try to make sure that when we got back in the room that, I had something to give her. I had made her, I made her pea soup, things that she really liked. Pea soup with ham and carrots and potatoes. I made her chicken noodle soup, and when I would bring her homemade soups, she would eat them really well. But I would have to feed it to her, and like I said, she would never open her eyes. She just kept her eyes closed all the time. It was so strange. But I would get there in the mornings, and I would inquire how much she ate, and I would wash her face, because they weren't taking care of her. I could tell by, I brought wash rags for her and towels and everything, because the ones they provided were so rough and so thin that, nobody would even want to use them. So I brought some nice fluffy towels and wash rags from her home, and I would fill up, one of those little tubs that they give you from the hospital and bring it to her bedside and wash her face and her hands and everything, get her all cleaned up, cut her nails. And she had, she had a lot of blood in her lungs, and when she would cough, she would just take this blood out with her hand, and she had blood all stained under her nails. I mean, it was terrible. And nobody at the hospital ever cleaned it out. Nobody at the nursing home cleaned it out. So that I soaked her hand in warm water, and I got a scrubby brush and scrubbed out her nails and cut her nails and everything. And she actually enjoyed it. She liked having her hand in warm water. Oh, the first day that she was there, she did get a shower, I have to tell you. So that Monday, the first day that she was at Sunday, it was a Sunday, the first day she was at the facility, I walked in there early. And I walked in before visiting hours because, that's how I am. And she was getting a breathing treatment because she still had a lung infection. She was getting a breathing treatment, and the whole room reeked. I mean, reeked. And there was a nurse and the aide were standing at her doorway. And they looked at me. They were in shock when they saw me. And I walked in there, and they go, "We're fixing to change her. We're fixing to change her." She had, excuse my language, from the waist down, she was covered in shit. She had pooped her diaper and taken it off and just that's how out of her mind she was. She was covered in shit. And the whole room smelled terrible. And they were giving her a breathing treatment while she was covered in feces. And they were like, "Oh, we're going to change her. We're changing her right now." And they took off the breathing treatment, and they put her in the shower. They put her in a wheelchair and put her in the shower. That was the first and only shower she had through this whole ordeal, from June the 9th. First time. They washed her hair, and, she actually felt good. She was like, she got back into bed, and I'm like, I bet you feel better. But she was cold, but, finally she got her hair washed and everything. So anyway, I forgot to say that. So who knows what happens to these people when there's no advocate for them and, nobody there watching over to protect them. It's really sad, you guys. So jumping ahead to Wednesday, that was a day after Mom had had her first dialysis. I was meeting with the facility, which I thought it was a planned care meeting. So we were going to talk about how we were going to get her up on her feet and how we're going to get her to participate in physical therapy. I thought I had written down all these things to talk about and ask them. I had planned for this meeting and sat down and wrote so many things. Well, this meeting turned out to be, your mother's in the wrong place. She's a liability for us. She cannot stay here. We need to find another place for her. That's all it was. I was so devastated by this meeting, y'all, knowing that we had just, this was, Wednesday, so she'd almost be there a week. So she'd been there half a week, and that means she was going to be there for however much longer, and nothing, we weren't getting ahead or anything. Now we were back at square one trying to find a place for her. So they gave me this name of a man that helps to place seniors in that, find the right facility for her. And they thought that she needed to be in a memory care facility. That a long-term memory care facility. That's what they told us. So this man helps to place her in that type of facility. He owns his own business, and it's kind of like the same thing as a place for mom. It's one of those organizations. So, I was just devastated, and I could not believe it. That we were just starting back from square one again, and after that meeting, you guys, I just started crying. I had to find a corner in the nursing home to sit. I couldn't go in my mother's room. I don't know if she would have noticed I was crying or not, but I didn't want to go in her room with me crying. Like, I don't know if she would have noticed, but because she had her eyes closed all the time, and who knows. But anyway, I didn't want to impact her in any way. So I just found a place and I cried and called my husband. My husband was there, but I had left him at the house while I was taking care of her because that's an all-day thing. And he drove to the facility to be with me because I was just at my wit's end by then. The next day was Thursday. She had to go to dialysis again. When we got to dialysis, they had put her in the back in the corner because now they know her and they know her behavior. So they put her way in the back out of the way, which was better because there was so much stimuli going on and every little sound really bothered her a lot. So it was perfect, except for she still didn't behave. She still was, screaming at people and just, what they told me was she had no bandage over her port. They said there's no bandage over her port. And I started thinking about it. At first I said, yeah, y'all, I don't think y'all put one on last time. And he said, that's impossible. That's impossible. And then I remembered I saw a bandage underneath her bed that morning. And I was wondering, what is that from? And I didn't realize it was from her port. And her port was infected. I'm so glad she didn't pull it out at the facility because it must have been bothering her and she pulled the bandage off. So they saw some pus around the port. So they called her doctor, her kidney doctor, and he ordered some culture tests and some blood drawn. And they said the test would be back in 2 days. So they did her dialysis and everything. She really was very difficult again, really difficult. I mean, they wanted to do a TB test on her. They want to do all kinds of tests. They want to give you a pneumonia vaccine, TB test. They wanted to give her COVID, vaccine because she'd never taken it. And I would have been all for it. I would have said yes, but my sister that had, she was in charge of her care, and she's told him no. I don't think she had a vaccine either, so I don't know what the deal is with that, but she didn't get the vaccine. But she had COVID at one point also. That may be what was, her lung was really messed up. So it could be possibly from that, or she vaped. So it could be from vaping. Her lungs were, in bad condition, really bad. So y'all know that she had dialysis for 3.5 hours, but it was more like 4 hours by the time they get you back there and get you hooked up and get the machine going. So it's more like 4 hours being back there. And I would just have to keep her calm and massage her. And, I would tell her anything she wanted to hear just to keep her calm. She would say, I want a hot dog. I want a hot dog. And I would say, okay, when you finish this, I'm going to get you a hot dog. The social worker came up and tried to talk to me, and my mother she was telling me, I need Vaseline for my lips. I need some Vaseline. And you guys, I didn't even realize it. I had a little tube of Vaseline in my purse to put on her lips, but she was so out of it. When I would try to put it on her lips, she would stick out her tongue, and I couldn't put it on her lips because she would stick out her tongue. So I took her finger and squeezed it on her finger, and I said, put it on your lips. And so she did it herself, fine. But with me, she was like she was taking a bite of something. And she just wanted me focused on her the whole time, just like a toddler. She did not want me to talk to the social worker. She was just, and I would tell her, if you behave and you're good, we'll go get a hot dog. And then she would be quiet, so that, she was really kind of like a toddler at that point. So she was really a handful. I have to back up, though, because one thing I didn't say was, I don't think I said that she wasn't peeing. When we left the hospital, they had been straight catheterizing her to have her pee, because the pee wasn't coming out. I don't know why. She couldn't pee, so they didn't want to put a Foley, because you couldn't go to the nursing home with a Foley, so they had taken that out. But she had pulled it out, so we thought that was better that they didn't keep that in, because she might pull it out again. And they would have to, like every 12 hours, they would come and do straight catheter on her. They didn't tell the nursing home that they needed to do this. So she went to the nursing home on Saturday, and she had not peed. It was Thursday, and she did not pee, so they did that on Thursday for her. So I don't know if that contributed to her getting sick. May have, I don't know. But I had alerted the facility that, hey, my mother hasn't peed. And then they did the straight catheter, and man, they had one of those male urinals. It was completely full. I think over 800 milliliters. So that's another reason they wanted her gone, was because she was such a liability, and that she needed so much care. That Thursday, when we got back to her nursing home, and I stayed with her, and I fed her and everything, and I would leave like at 6:45, because I was supposed to be gone by 7. So usually about 6:45, I would say, I'm going to leave, Mom. And like I said, she would never open her eyes. So I would just go, and I would always just scratch the top of her head, and kiss her and say, I'm leaving now. Bye, Mom. I love you. And I was walking away. I was walking across her room, and she said, I love you too. And then she said, and Trudy, thank you for everything that you've done for me. And I was just like, wow, because she hadn't been that coherent in a long time. So that was such a blessing to hear that. So Friday's the next day, and that's the day that I leave to go home. So it was kind of relief, but also my mother had a doctor's appointment. Now I was meeting with the new guy that was supposed to be placing my mother in another nursing home that could care for her. I was meeting him at 1 o'clock, and she had a doctor's appointment at 12. So I couldn't be at two places at once. So my sister took off and came to the nursing home to go with my mother to her doctor's appointment. And this is her regular cardiologist that she's been going to for years, and she really likes him. So I dressed her. I brought her a dress, and then I decided to put some leggings on her because, I don't know, she's so skinny and all, so I told my sister, let's put some leggings on her. So we got a pair of leggings and put them on her, and she was all ready to go, dressed and everything. The nurse that was caring for her was a male nurse. His name was Terry. He did not like my mother because my mother was combative, and he acted like it was a personal attack on him, which she was combative with us. She was just out of her mind. When I dressed her, he came and put her in the wheelchair, and it was 50 minutes, almost 1 hour before the van was going to pick her up. And she needed to be cleaned up. She had gone in her diaper, and she needed to be cleaned up. And he sat her there because it was too long. I'm saying, why would he want her to sit there? She could barely sit up, barely. And we had to be right there to make sure she didn't fall out. I can't believe he thought she was going to sit there for almost 1 hour and then have to ride to the doctor's office and then wait at the doctor's, wait inside the doctor's office to see the doctor and all. And that just added more time to it. So I took my mother and I put her back in the bed myself and called the aide to come and clean her up. So they came and cleaned her up. And I said, she can just lay here until it's time to go. She doesn't need to get in the wheelchair. And my mother heard me, that I said that's too long for her. And she said it too. She goes, yeah, I don't know what they're thinking. So she was kind of listening, And when it was time for her to get in the wheelchair, because she had heard what I'd said, oh my God, she put up a fight, you guys, a horrible fight. The nurse sat her up in her bed, and she kept trying to lay back down. So I got behind her and held on to her so she couldn't lay back down. And he was trying to guide her to stand up so he could pivot her and put her in the wheelchair. And she was telling him, you don't touch me, I am gonna deck you. And she was swinging on him. I mean, she was trying to hit him and punch him in the face. Of course, she's really weak, she couldn't hurt him. She did hit me a few times while I was caring for her, and it didn't hurt. It made me laugh. I was just like in shock. But he said, we're going to find another facility for you if you don't start behaving. I'm like, really? She doesn't understand what she's doing. And he told that to her that day, and he told it to her like the next day, or when she got back also. I don't know. Twice he had threatened to get her out of that nursing home. He knew that she was leaving. I don't know why he had to say that to her or treat her that way. Can you imagine how these people are treated when there's nobody there? I mean, just imagine what they're saying to them, what they're doing to them. When we first got there at the nursing home, me and my husband, we heard a lady yelling, help me, over and over and over. And I was like, what's wrong? Why isn't anybody helping her, They don't care. They don't care. They just get immune to hearing people call for help, and they don't. When I would push the button for them to come change my mother, it would sometimes take them 30 minutes to come in there. My mother could not push a button, y'all. She couldn't change a channel selector. She couldn't call for help, nothing. She could yell. And that's the only good thing. If she needed something, she would yell, and they could hear her, but they wouldn't really always respond to her. Anyway, it was so hard to get her in this wheelchair, y'all. She was swinging on this man, and I told my husband, get in front of that nurse, get in front of him, and get my mom. So when he stepped in front of the nurse, my husband took her by the armpit, and she stopped swinging. So maybe she did know a little bit of reasoning of what she's doing. She did not try to hit my husband or anything. She allowed him to guide her into the chair, and they got her into the wheelchair. But it was really difficult. We walked her to the van. I made sure that they placed her in the van securely. I know this is going over 30 minutes, y'all, but I want to get this story out and out of me. You know what I mean? I'm kind of just telling it to just put it out there so I don't have to say it again. But there's so much that happened. And she went to her doctor's before she left, I stuck my head in the van and I said, "Mom, I'll see you when you get back." And she shot the finger at me. She was so mad because she had to go to the doctor. But when she got back from the doctor's office, she said, "I don't want to go in that bed." And they took her to the cafeteria. My sister took her to the cafeteria, and she sat up and fed herself some chicken noodle soup. Now, she didn't eat a whole lot of it, but she actually put some salt and pepper in it and fed herself. So that was pretty amazing. And it was already getting later in the evening, so it was probably 4 o'clock when, maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock. So that sundowning usually had started happening by then, but it didn't happen. She went to bed and went, got put in bed and went to sleep. And I thought, oh, well, this is a really significant change in her behavior. Maybe she just needed to get up in that, wheelchair and clear her head and sit up for a while. Maybe that, this is the beginning of her getting well. I had so much hope. So I was leaving. Me and my husband had packed our bags. We were heading out, and I got a phone call from my niece. My brother had a heart attack. Now, my brother is the one, I think I told y'all in another video, they were in a horrible car accident, and he felt like he had broken some ribs, but he wouldn't go to the hospital. And he had been having pain for about 2.5 weeks. Well, it was angina. He had a blockage of 99%. It was in the widowmaker artery. That's what they called it, the widowmaker. And he's just lucky it didn't kill him. That night, his daughter gave him 2 aspirin, and she thought that it was something else. They thought it was some kind of muscle damage from the accident, his ribs, maybe it cracked a rib and he was just having pain. But she gave him 2 aspirin, and she gave him 2 aspirin that morning also. And then by 10 o'clock that morning, he said, "I got to go to the hospital." The pain was shooting back into his back from across the front to his back, and he still didn't realize it was a heart attack. He was having an ongoing heart attack for like 4 days. And they did an EKG on him, and he was giving the information, his personal information to the nurse. And another nurse came and got him and said, "You need to get in this wheelchair." And he said, "I don't need a wheelchair." And he said, "You are having a cardiac event. You need to get in the wheelchair." And they put him in the cath lab, and they gave him a stent. And he was in AFib for 2 days. They had to put him back in the cath lab and shock his heart back into rhythm. And now, because of so much trauma that his heart has gone through, his heart is squeezing, that squeezing rate, I forgot what it's called, it's only at 50%. So it's kind of weak, but they don't think there's damage. But, he's gone through so much. He's the brother he's my only brother, and he lost his wife in March, if y'all remember that. So he's gone through a lot. He has. He's like heartbroken, I feel like it's really contributed to his heart attack. Was just he's grieved so deeply for his wife. He really has, and it's really been hell on him. So, my husband and he lives about an hour and a half from where my mother lives. So instead of us going home, we drove to him, hour and a half, the opposite direction. So they live in Cleveland, so we drove to Lovekin. And I wasn't with him right when he went in, but when he woke up from getting a stent, they don't really put you to sleep. It's kind of a twilight-like sleep. You kind of doze off, but you're awake while they're doing the procedure. So right when he woke up, they let us all go back there because it was kind of late in the evening by the time they finished. And it was so funny because he was like high as a kite. And you would think he'd be real sleepy because my husband's been through that before, and he was always real sleepy, and he slept at the end. My brother was, talking nonstop. And they let him eat too. I fed him just like I'd been feeding my mom. I fed him dinner, and he talked through the whole thing. But he's doing, he's doing really well. He got released just today. So back to my mother. So my brother is in the hospital. My mother, and he's in the hospital, but he's doing good. They're planning on shocking his heart. My mother's in the nursing home. She's doing fine. It's looking like everybody's going to be okay. So me and my husband decided to go home. We did spend the night. We did spend one night with my niece. I forgot about that. So the first night that my brother had the procedure done, it was late at night, like I said. So we got a hotel. We had our niece come with us, and we slept in a hotel. We got up the next morning. We went to go see him again. He was doing well, and we decided we were going to go home. So we went home. My days are so confused, y'all. We went home, and on Saturday, my mother was having her dialysis, and they got the lab results. So my sister goes to dialysis with her. We have to drive separate, and meet the ambulance there. That's how this goes down. When she gets there, they looked at her lab reports, and they said, your mother is septic, she has sepsis, she needs to be in a hospital now. So she was very, very sick. And they had actually given her on Tuesday when I was there, when they initially thought she had an infection, possibly, when they cultured it, they had given her a whole bunch of antibiotics in her IV. So she had some antibiotics. So the ambulance driver said, we have to take her back to the facility because they're contracted with the nursing home. So they had to take her back to the facility, and then the facility has to call 911. And we had her transported to another hospital, not the same one that, we feel like made so many mistakes with her. We went to Herman Hospital in Humble, Texas. So she was transported there. And as soon as she got there, this hospital is just bumping and grinding. There's so many people there. But they put her in right away, and they put her on a IV right away, antibiotic IV. My sisters, they both stayed there with her. My other sister drove in from Dallas while my sister stayed there with her. And they stayed there with her till about 10 o'clock at night. And they had talked to her, and they had, she had eaten a little bit of food. And then they decided to leave like 10 o'clock at night. And they got a call at 4 o'clock in the morning that my mother had coded 3 times. And she was on life support. So I got the call. I didn't get a call. They were texting me, and I was up. I was awake right at the time the text came at 4:15. I was standing by my phone. I had gotten up to go use the restroom, and then, of course, the cat wanted to eat, Addie cat. I had just fed her a little something, and I heard the text come through, and so I saw that Mom had coded 3 times, and she was on life support and not doing too well. So I started getting ready to go right then and there. We'd only been home, we'd been home a couple of nights, I guess, by then, 2 nights. And those 2 nights were, those 2 days that we were home, all I did was clean house. Vacuum, mop, scrub toilets, clean out the refrigerator, and then we're ready to go again. But we left, I would say we left around 7:30 in the morning, and around 8 o'clock my mother passed away. All that, and she passed away. But my sisters had, they were a lot closer than I was to the hospital, and they had gotten there, 4:30, 4:45 or something like that, and they were with her up until that point. But the hospital said they found her blue when they, tried to resuscitate her, she was already blue, and she coded 3 times. So she, you know, they didn't expect her to make it. Put it that way. They don't tell you that on the phone, but once you get there, they tell you that, you know, she's her blood pressure was so low, and they had maxed out all the medicine and everything that they could do for her. And so my sisters were with her in the last hours, telling her that we loved her and holding her hand. So, yeah. So I'm back home again. I did go when we were on our way to rush to my mother's side. Then I went ahead and went to my brother's side because he was having that shock therapy done that day. So we drove straight to my brother's hospital and waited with his children. You know, his children's mother had passed. Their mother had passed in March, so they were by themselves there at the hospital. So in a way, it was good that we actually were there for the children, and everything worked out fine. You know, his heart's back in rhythm. He's having to wear a defibrillator vest because his heart's only pumping 50% in case, you know, anything goes wrong. They can shock his heart back into rhythm, or if his heart stops, it can shock his heart back. So, you know, things work out as they should. We stayed another night, and my sister decided, you know, we all made that agreement, but we decided to have my mother cremated, and we didn't want to tell my brother that she passed on because he is in such a fragile state right now. And we talked to the doctor, and the doctor asked us, he said, you can do whatever you want, of course, but I think it would be best if y'all waited to tell him. Well, you know what happened. Somebody texted him and said, I'm so sorry for your mother's passing, the day after she had passed. So that's how he found out. And he was asking me questions at the hospital. How's mom doing? She's in intensive care again. She's on life support, because he knew all these things. We have a family chat, and he had read that. So I had to lie to his face and say, yeah, she's on life support. Yeah. I'm gonna go see her. And he was like, is Cindy with her? And I'm like, yes, my sister. Yeah, they're with her. Yeah, don't worry. She's in good hands, you know. And then after all that, somebody texted him and said, first text that he got from somebody saying, I'm so sorry to hear about your mother. But he thought that they meant she was on life support. He didn't know that they meant she had passed. And then another person texted him and said, I'm so sorry, I heard your mother pass. You know, I want to give you my condolences for your mother's passing, whatever. So that's how he found out. He was devastated. He was supposed to get out of the hospital yesterday, but he found out that she passed, and he had to have a shot of morphine to calm down. And he stayed an extra day in the hospital. So maybe it was a good thing that he found out, because he could be treated, you know, give him something to calm him down. And, you know, maybe that was the best thing after all. So now he knows. And we haven't had a service for her. She actually hasn't been cremated yet, but we're going to have a service for her after my brother is strong enough to attend the services. So it might be 2 weeks before we have a service for her. And my mother never had a service for her husband. She had donated his body to science, and they're supposed to return his ashes. And she said, when his ashes come back, we'll have a service. But it can take up to a year, you know. And, you know, services aren't really for the person that died. It's for the people that are living. So she hadn't properly grieved for him, and I think that was a strain on her also. So we're going to have a double ceremony. We'll have a service for him and her in about 2 weeks. Even if we don't get his ashes back, we're going to have the service for both of them. So that's what's going in the works now. So that's the story, you guys. So I'm back home. I will go back for the service, of course, but for now I'm home. I'm ready to begin to work again. I do have some readings to do, and if you're one of those people that I owe a reading to, I'm sorry that I'm not doing the reading before I get this out. I started to do some readings. Oh, I have to tell y'all something about something that really happened that was cool. But I just want to tell you guys, thank you for being patient with me, and I'm going to start your reading tomorrow. I'm going to start doing readings tomorrow, okay? I had to purge. I just had to purge this. So let me tell y'all one other thing. It's going to be 1 hour, so long. I'm sorry, you guys. It's a long story. When I got home last night, my daughter told me the night that my mother died, she was laying in her bed with her lamp on, and her lamp flickered off and on, off and on, off and on. It kept flickering off and on, and she didn't know what it was, but she kind of thought maybe is that, she called my mother Mammy, and she was like, I think that was Mammy, just there letting me know that she had passed. So listen to what happened to me last night. So last night before I went to sleep, I said a little prayer, and I said, please let my mother come through. Let me hear from my mother. So either she could come through in a dream or whatever, but I wanted to hear from my mom to make sure she was okay. I always leave a light on for Addie Cat in my bathroom because that's where I feed her and that's where her litter box is. So there's one little light over my bathtub that I always leave on for her. It's just one small light. It's a recessed light in the ceiling, So that's on. Me and my husband are laying here in our bed, and all of a sudden the light is going off and on, slowly, not a flicker, not like flick, flicker, flicker. It was going off, on, off, just like somebody was hitting the switch, off, on. And we thought somebody was fooling around with the light. I'm like, what's happening? Who's doing that? And I got up and I went to my bathroom, and I saw the light over the bathtub was going off, on, and I said, Mom, is that you? And then the light got real dim. It got really, really dim, but it didn't turn out, but it got dim. And I said, thank you for letting me know that that you made it, that you're here. Now I know you're here. I love you. I know you're here now. So I know she's made it to the other side, and she's here, and she communicated that with me. And then I turned the light off, and I went to bed. I went to sleep. And I went right to sleep, y'all. And it was amazing. I mean, it was really amazing. So I woke up this morning. I went straight to the light, and turned the light on to see if that light was flickering or if the light was burned out or anything. Just stayed on. It's not burnt out. It's not flickering. There's not a short, nothing. It was just on. So I do believe that was my mother just maybe saying goodbye or saying, I made it to the other side. I'm here. And, that was amazing. It was really amazing. So I look forward to maybe hearing more from her soon. So I'll let y'all know. All right, guys. I'm going to say goodbye for now. Thank you for being patient with me. I'm going to be back doing public readings now and private readings also. If you need to get a healing, if you'd like me to send healing to you, I have been doing that through this whole couple of months. I did a healing, of course, for my brother too, so I know that he's going to be okay. I know he's going to be fine. But if you need to get a healing, if you would like me to send healing to you, just email me a name of a loved one, yourself, anybody, a friend, anybody. If you'd like to get a reading with me, send me an email. We'll get started on that, okay? Also, chakra balancing. I do portal closings. And I need to get back to work. So y'all hit me up, okay? Hit me up. If you need some energy cleanse, hit me up. All right, guys, I love you so much. Thank you for all your well wishes, your thoughts, your prayers, and everything. I love y'all so much. I couldn't have gone through this without all this wonderful energy that y'all sent me. I couldn't have made it without you guys, honestly. So Thank you. Do something kind for somebody. It'll always come back to you. And bye for now.